Media has always displayed sharks in a dichotomy of ways. Either they are the monsters of the oceans who are happy to make you and your friends into a Happy Meal, or they are shown in a more realistic way of being misunderstood giants of the sea. Maneater acknowledges the latter, but fully embraces the former to create a destructively cathartic open-world RPG experience where you take the reins of one of Earth's most amazing sea creatures. Developed by Tripwire and published by Deep Silver, Maneater was released on May 22, 2020 for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch and PC. It was marketed as the world's first ShaRkpg. Ultimately, the game is an open-world action role-playing game where you play as a shark. It combines many elements from existing games, including different gear or evolutions that you can equip on your shark, explore different regions, level up, find collectibles and more. Now, I am going to try to avoid major spoilers in this section, but there is one element that happens just 5 minutes into the game that could be considered a spoiler, but at the same time it's one of the main driving elements of the game's story. If you don't want to know anything about the story, go to the timestamp you see on screen now. So, you've been warned. The comically self-aware story of Maneater is kind of unique. It takes the overblown shark documentaries that paint sharks as man-eaters and uses this format as the main way of delivering Maneater's story. The documentary show, known as Maneater, sees a film crew following the antics of a grizzled shark hunter, Pierre Scaly Pete LeBlanc, and his son Kyle. The player comes into the story playing as a rogue adult female bull shark who is terrorizing the local beaches of Port Clovis. This is when Scaly Pete gets wind of you and begins to hunt you down. It turns out that the bull shark you have been playing as has a history with Pete, as you still bear a harpoon in your flank you received from Scaly Pete's father. But alas, Pete catches you and ends your life, but not before realizing that the bull you've been playing as is pregnant. Cutting out the little pup, Scaly Pete goes to throw you back into the swamp, but not before leaving a mark on its dorsal fin with a cut from his knife. This is so he can hunt it down later, despite the disapproval of his son Kyle. But this is not without consequence, as the cut prompts the pup into life, biting down on Pete's arm, severing it as it falls into the swamp. This is where the game of Maneater really starts, as you take on the role of this pup bull shark. As a newborn, you must survive the wilds of the swamp, eating and consuming other wildlife as you grow from a baby to a teenager. Soon you'll be able to move on from the dangers of the swamp to more urban ports as you grow from a teen to an adult. During this time of discovery, you'll also start encountering humans, to which, much like other marine life you've encountered, provide a good source of protein. However, this will also start to get the attention of local shark hunters and other apex predators, such as oversized alligators or lightning-fast mako sharks, to which the player can either avoid or ultimately take on and consume. Regardless, your antics will attract the attention of Scaly Pete and of course the Maneater documentary crew. This will lead to more encounters, one of which deeply scars Pete, turning him from an already eccentric shark hunter to a full-blown Captain Ahab. Eventually though, as the story goes on, you'll start moving through the Port Clovis areas, from pristine beaches to even a semi-open ocean, encountering a myriad of wondrous sea life to which you can snack on of course. This will eventually trigger your growth from an adult to an elder. During this time you'll also continue to take on more shark hunters, apex predators and new and tasty fauna. This will all culminate in the game's climactic showdown with Scaly Pete. Now, while the major scenes with Scaly Pete and his son are told via National Geographic style documentary scenes, other story elements are told through a narrator, voiced by the amazing Chris Parnell, aka Jerry from Rick and Morty. This is done in a sort of David Attenborough style way, however it's obviously done with tongue in cheek, delivering both comic and informative facts about sharks, the wildlife and Port Clovis. This adds to the game's story by filling in the story gaps as you go from a baby bull shark to an adult. Coupled with this are a few background stories narrated by Scaly Pete and his son Kyle to add some background to the game's main antagonists. And it all results in a story that, while yes, bears many similarities to Moby Dick or of course Jaws, has layers and shades of grey. Scaly Pete is supposed to be the villain, but shark hunting is all he's known, and he cares deeply for his family, leading to a bit of a tragic character. This, coupled by us playing a shark that has only known hostility from humans since birth, leads to a story of revenge that seems a little out of place for such a tongue-in-cheek game. And I for one was pleasantly surprised with the little tale that Maneater brought to the table. The gameplay of Maneater is where things start to get, well, crazy. A ShaRkpg combining open world elements, ocean combat, gear or evolutions, leveling up and more. How can these elements combined not make you raise an eyebrow and wonder how it's all going to work? Movement as a shark is smooth and responsive as you glide through the watery environments. There are 3 planes that you can really interact with. Underwater, this allows you to control your bull shark smoothly, akin to airborne combat found in other games almost. Sharks in real life of course have limitations that have been left on the cutting room floor in favour of gameplay. So you're able to remain motionless, for example, but regardless you are able to freely swim around with little hindrance to control. The next plane of movement comes when you are skimming the surface, otherwise known as knifing. This is the iconic image how most people see sharks, with their dorsal fin above the waves. This plane will soft lock your shark into position, allowing you to glide through the waters with speed and ease. This eliminates the 3-dimensional movement that you have when you are fully submerged underwater, allowing for a more 2D field of movement to play around with. Great for travelling long distances or for quickly jumping out of the water to attack opponents above the waves. You can of course, with the simple press of a button, dive down back into the waters, giving you that 3-dimensional underwater movement again if you so wish. Also, the transition between the 2 planes is smooth and responsive, making for a smooth experience. Finally, the 3rd plane of movement is when you become beached on land. Now everyone knows that sharks are about as useful on land as a bucket with a hole in, but you still have the option to wander, or in this case flop, around on dry land. You will be limited though in terms of time, as you will start to suffocate if you stay out of water for too long. But you're able to venture onto land for objectives, collectibles or quick meals, before of course retreating back into the watery depths. It's kind of amusing in a way. The movement at times can feel like a smooth dance as you glide from an underwater position to a knifing position to jumping out into the air before diving back in, or it can be as amusing as leaping from the waters, mistiming your jump and then flopping on land, to which you have to hop or flop back into the water unceremoniously. The combat in Maneater is a bloody affair with positives and negatives, but it is a big part of Maneater nonetheless. Not only as a survival tool, but a way to evolve and level up. While moving around, you're able to freely target enemies, but this is not a lock-on. You have to maintain eyes on your intended target via the camera in order to attack it. Your target is indicated with a flashing red target icon over it. A lock-on feature here would have been nice and added some quality of life, but you do get used to this. The main issue is that you can lose your target quite easily. Against high threat foes, there is a button, R3 on the PlayStation 4 for example, to quickly target and recenter the camera on the biggest threat, but regardless it's one of the negatives of the game and it takes a while to adapt and get used to this style of targeting. But once you have your foe in your sights, it's time to start combat, using a series of shark style attacks from your standard bite, fresher shark tail whips, ramming attacks and the iconic shark thrashing attack. You're able to deal out damage to your prey. These can even be comboed into one another. For example, say you're taking on a shark hunter, you can leap out the ocean and bite down on the hunter from his boat, dragging him into the waters and start to thrash about, dealing damage that way. After which you can simply build up a bit of speed with the hunter still in your mouth, leap from the oceans, and while still holding the hunter in your mouth, combo into your tail whip, which will send the hunter flying back at his friends on the boat. When moments like this happen, combat feels fun and thought out, despite its chaotic nature. When facing other sea creatures, you have to take into account the mass or size of your opponent compared to you. There are moments that, when fighting other predators, they will glow and flash yellow, giving you a chance to bite down on them and thrash them, dealing out uninterrupted damage. Of course you have to be wary, as bigger sea life can also do the same to you, especially when you're a pup or teen. For example, the early game alligators can really be a pain in regards to this, but once you work out their attack patterns or ultimately level up and come back later, it's not that much of an issue so long as you're careful. Sticking with facing sea life, some of the creatures you face like the Mako sharks or barracuda, they are very fast creatures, opting for hit and run attacks, which comes with a learning curve to counter. But creatures like this have moments before they charge, to which they light up again, indicating that they can be grabbed and thrashed around. So whilst it may not seem like it at first, different creatures in Manhunter behave differently and of course have different attack patterns that you can use and abuse to your advantage. Eventually though, as you level up and gain gear, or evolutions as it's called in Maneater, you gain access to more unrealistic attacks. Like your tail swipe can also send out an electric shockwave, allowing you to deal ranged damage to an opponent, or your dodge and evade button now deals a poison AoE blast as you perform it. You also eventually gain access to an ultimate ability, which can differ depending on what gear or evolution you are using, which when activated gives you brief buffs to your shark. This can be really helpful, especially when surrounded by foes. But while there are moments where combat flows like a dance, a lot of the time it's a hectic mess, resulting in button mashing in hopes that you can bite down on something to eat. This is normally the case when fighting large groups of opponents, when it's difficult to maintain your target. While not the worst thing in the world, it's something that detracted at times, to which a lock-on mechanic could have resolved. Otherwise, it's just a case of learning how the game combat works, and in a way, once you've embraced the chaos, it's a fun experience. Now with Maneater, the developers have emphasised that the game is an RPG, and in a way the game does have role-playing mechanics, but these are on the light side. But even with that being said, there are enough of them to keep you interested by combining various RPG-like aspects together. For example, you can level up your shark, but as you do, your shark grows up, it grows in age. As you complete quests and missions, you unlock gear or evolutions, which can also be leveled up themselves via the materials you gain from consuming humans and other sea life. These evolutions have different stats and even come with set bonuses to provide players with different playstyles, adding some layers to the game. As with any RPG out there, the quests range from kill a set amount of sea creatures, collect a set amount of license plates, discover and explore certain zones and so on. Nothing groundbreaking here, all that stands apart from other games, but all these aspects combined make for an RPG experience that wasn't too in-depth, but was fun enough to be a part of. The game takes place entirely in the iconic coastal city of Port Clovis, but this doesn't mean we are restricted to just urban ports. During your time with Maneater, you'll experience murky swamps, polluted ports, pristine beaches, and even the open ocean. All of this is filled with sea life, from simple turtles to sperm whales, giving Port Clovis a feeling of being alive. Even the humans, while having basic animations, go about their day differently depending on what time of day it is. For example, in some areas, there will be far more humans swimming in the ocean during the day than at night. Much like with other RPGs out there, Port Clovis is divided into different sections. There are 8 fairly large areas to Port Clovis, but you can't freely explore all of these zones until you have, well, grown up and gain access to new skills, or completed other key missions. Some players may be put off by this, but it kind of makes sense. For example, a baby shark would not last long in the Gulf area, which is filled with high-level sea predators that would easily turn you into a fish stick. So in a way, the zones being unlocked one after another gives the game a form of structure, and doesn't overwhelm the player from the get-go. Maneater is both beautiful and ugly at the same time. Some areas, namely the underwater ones, are beautiful works of marine art. The sea creatures themselves, especially the bull shark you play as, look the part, with attention to detail being clearly shown on the models and environment. On the other side of the coin though, human models seem a little bit lacking and simplified, which is not always a bad thing. If Tripwire were going for a more stylistic approach, it would have worked, but I doubt this is the case given the detail of the marine life in the game. The sound design of Maneater is quiet for the most part, with the sound of the ocean being true to life. Music is set to a minimal, however, when combat starts, things take a turn for the comically chaotic, with exaggerated chomping sounds as you bite down on prey, humans screaming comic lines as you drag them from their paddle boats, or the amazing rock soundtracks that kick in when you activate your ultimate ability. The presentation aspects of the story are also well delivered in the audio department. While human models are kinda simple, as we already mentioned, the voice acting is stellar and helped deliver Maneater's very self-aware satire of a shark documentary. From the crazy Cajun rantings of Scaly Pete to the comic facts of the narrator, it all adds quality to the total package of Maneater. Ironic in a way, as you truly are playing a silent protagonist, or in all honesty, anti-hero, and the acting of the supporting cast is what helps deliver the amusing story. Unfortunately, despite all the praise I am giving Maneater, there were a few aspects that left a little bit of a black stain. During hectic combat in some areas, the frame rate on PlayStation 4 suffered badly, and there were even a few occasions where the game completely crashed. Now, at the time of this review, Tripwire have acknowledged performance issues, and hopefully a stability patch will not be far off, ultimately eliminating this issue altogether. Overall, Maneater is a wonderful satire of a shark documentary that paints the amazing marine creatures as monsters. While I truly understand sharks are not monsters, this game takes the misinformation that some documentaries show them as and runs with it, allowing you to take the reins of a shark as if they were as monstrous as these documentaries say they are. Of course, there is a downside to this, as if people do not realise this is a satire, this could simply add fuel to the fire and spread more fear regarding sharks. But regardless, Maneater the game is a joy to play, fun, chaotic, and surprisingly cathartic as you rampage through the waters. Yes, it has some teething problems and one or two strange choices when it comes to combat, but the total package is worth it. The light RPG mechanics give you structure and allow for some variety in your gameplay, but you should not go into this expecting the depth of other RPG games out there. It took me around 18 to 20 hours of play to get the Platinum Trophy for Maneater on PlayStation 4, which could be considered short, but when you take into account that this game is not being sold at full price, I cannot recommend it enough. A fun oceanic romp, and ultimately the best shark game on the market today.